So good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Select Board special meeting for October 15th, 2020. The meeting tonight will be a discussion of the Town Administrator Search Committee recommendations and related matters, and to vote on next steps with regard to the Select Board search for our next Town Administrator. I just wanted to begin by recapping this process for the town because many of you are probably not familiar with the hiring process for the town administrator. It is mandated by our town code in Chapter 3. And so the Select Board back in August voted to establish the Town Administrator Search Committee. The bylaw itself dictates who will sit on the committee. It consists of 5 members. One is the chair of the committee will be a member of the Board of Selectmen. I, as the chair of the Board of Selectmen, took on that role for tasks. The second member will be a member of the Finance Committee, appointed by the Finance Committee. That member for this process was Greg Champney. The third member will be a member of the School Committee, appointed by the School Committee. That individual was Justin McCarthy. And then a member of the Personnel Committee appointed by the Personnel Committee, who was Gary Wilson. And finally, the 5th member of the board is a member at large with municipal management experience appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And in this case, that individual was Ivan Gasic. So we began this process, as I said, back in August. We posted the job description for the town administrator position, and we vetted 28 applicants from that job posting. As part of preparation for the job search in itself, task took a number of steps, and that was we reviewed the screening criteria from 2018 for the position itself. We determined that there was no revisions warranted. The screening criteria consists of 13 components, including experience, project development, finance, budget, personnel, collective bargaining, leadership, and communication, to name a few. Task also reviewed the interview questions used during the last hiring process, which consisted of 14 questions. The committee discussed and revised those questions to be more direct and simplified, while providing ample opportunity to prompt pertinent follow-up questions to the candidate. There were a number of factors that helped streamline this hiring process, especially the members of the search committee themselves. We worked very well together and are very proud and thankful for their contribution to this project. The other thing that immensely helped this project was that the strong candidate pool itself that we received during this process was very impressive. So as I said, the posting of the TA position resulted in the submission of 28 applications from that pool. Task independently screened the applicants using the application screening form provided by our HR department. We then met in executive session to discuss our findings. From those meetings, we chose 6 candidates to interview. We interviewed them on 2 separate evenings, and each interview was 45 minutes in length. In accordance with our bylaw, Task is required to submit more than one candidate to the Select Board for consideration. The committee actually recommended 3 candidates to the Select Board during this process. So the chair of the Select Board participated in the initial interview process of these candidates, and the 4 remaining members of the Select Board independently interviewed each candidate at Town Hall in half-hour time slots last night. We're convening here tonight to discuss each candidate. It turns out we are collectively not satisfied with the applicants presented to us by the search committee, we can vote to send the process back to Task for more direction and further action, such as continuing the search process. If we are collectively satisfied with the candidate pool, the board will vote at the conclusion of this meeting on the candidates before us. The board feels it's important to use discretion as possible when discussing the qualifications of someone seeking employment with the town of Littleton. So we don't want to take any candidate who's not chosen for the position this evening, and we will follow that process here tonight. And in doing so, we will be discussing the candidates based on number, candidate 1, candidate 2, and candidate 3. For tonight's discussion, I'm going to ask each member of the board to share their thoughts about each candidate. providing as much detail as they deem necessary for purposes of this discussion. I'm going to start with Matthew, Mr. Nordhaus, and then I'm going to conclude with myself. After we've had an opportunity to speak, after each one of us has had an opportunity to speak, we'll discuss how we want to proceed at that time. This could mean narrowing the candidate field even more and scheduling subsequent interviews, sending the process back to task, as I mentioned previously, or deciding tonight that it's not necessary because we are in agreement about one candidate in particular. So are there any questions from the board about the process?
If you didn't say it, Madam Chair, I think the intention was that we refer to these candidates just by the number.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, candidate one, candidate two, and candidate three.
Based upon the way that we held our interviews, candidate one, it's the same.
Same, yeah,
Numbers.
I didn't switch up the numbers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Nordhaus, please.
Very much. Given my sort of limited experience in the municipal arena, I felt I should focus on personality and fit as one of the things that I was going to primarily investigate. I asked all three candidates to describe an ethical dilemma that they had faced in their professional career, how they resolved it, what their role was in the resolution, and in hindsight, would they have done something differently. So I'm going to begin with candidate two because he was the first one that I interviewed. My impression is he was definitely the most sincere of the three. I felt as though he was not telling me something that I wanted to hear. He talked a great deal about setting an example of professionalism and integrity and respect for the rest of the employees. I think he was very focused on ethical and respectful conduct. He had a really great answer for my ethics question with a sort of a detailed description of a very tough situation that he had gotten into with his board in the town that he's in now, and how he dealt with it and the struggles that he did. And I felt that showed a lot about his ability to resolve problems and respond to adverse situations. And the other answer I liked from him was when I asked him how he might institute changes, he talked about getting buy-in from the people who would be affected and how he needed to have data on what he wanted to change and why, and he needed to make sure that the people who were affected were on board. I think the one negative is he might not have experience with a town our size. But going on the adage, hire for fit, not for skill, I think he would be a great candidate. Candidate number three was next. I think he is very strong. He has demonstrated an excellent ability to manage projects. I think he's very good at managing, financial issues where there are multiple competing camps, let's say. His response to my ethics question was also very personal and I think very sincere. I liked it. I think the only negative for him was I felt as though there was a little too much salesmanship going on, and I'm not sure that I got 100% genuine answers to my questions. And candidate one was third. He was by far the most he had the most ideas. Every time I asked him about a scenario, he would bring up a example of something that he had done or a process or a project that he had implemented. They were actionable. He would articulate about how he wanted to do it. I think he was a very good communicator. He has a demonstrated ability to manage a large town. He's very experienced, so those are all pluses. He did not really answer my ethics question, and that troubled me. He did not really, also I asked about tough employees that he had dealt with. He told me some incidents, but they weren't very significant. And again, I think he was telling me what I wanted to hear, and I'm not 100% convinced that I got 100% accurate answers from him. And that's my report.
Great, Thank you very much. Mr. DeCoste?
Okay, similarly, not that I have a whole lot more experience than you do, man, I've been a couple times, from the school committee on through, board of selectmen, and I think fit and personality are critical components. I wouldn't downplay your take at all. I think it's important, no matter what the community is, but I definitely feel it's important for those to get a good understanding of what fit and what personality we think will succeed. So I was fortunate enough for myself to have them in order 1, 2, 3. So I hope I don't get confused. But with candidate number 1, I like Mr. Norris, I had some similar feelings relative to the kind of telling me what I wanted to hear versus just answering the question sincerely and genuinely. This individual is extremely knowledgeable. He has a great deal of experience. And one of the things that I also found as a positive was his longevity in his most recent position. That shows the ability to work with various boards and his tenure was similar to what we have with Keith. So I that individual tenure shouldn't have gone up there. So the next one I have was number 2. Less experience than number 1, but also a very knowledgeable individual, very intelligent individual. I too noticed his focus on ethics and morals, and the moral fiber, in demanding. In fact, he used the word demanding a couple of times of his staff and his employees to lead by his example, and to follow. He leads by example, and demanded that his employees followed his lead, which I mostly see as a positive, but I can also see that strong of language that could be perceived by staff, knowing our staff, as may not be as receptive, but his experience with some municipal projects, and not his current position, although he's working on some stuff in his current position, but previous experience with municipal building projects. This individual was very, very involved, and in that built into that experience and beyond into the current position, his knowledge of procurement and certification and the level of knowledge of Chapter 30 and Chapter 149, Chapter 30 being general procurement, and 149 being with building projects. So his level of knowledge there, I saw as certainly an asset in his candidacy. Candidate number 3, can share a lot of the same views that my colleagues and others offered up. Again, very, very, very knowledgeable individual. Has, again, less experience than candidate number 1, but the experience is extremely germane to our community. This individual uses a lot of resources to find ways to solve problems, whether it's BBMMA, networking with colleagues, folks that he attended school with. He definitely uses, is humble enough to be able to reach out and ask for help of colleagues and collaborate. And that's a big thing, I think, for us, to be able to collaborate and to work with others. One of the things I very much appreciated about this candidate was specifically spoke to working with staff and helping to develop staff and mentoring, specifically named our assistant town administrator, Joe Layden. He said he's excited about the opportunity to work with Joe and for them to work together and to mentor Joe and help him to navigate to the next step, to the next level, and to get him there. I saw that as a good leadership quality. One of the, let's see, was scribbling along notes. One of the things he said towards the end was he looks forward to the opportunity to be a part of the Littleton team and helping everyone be better. It was a direct quote, and oftentimes when you're in an interview, it's all about you. And I like the fact that this person kind of is focused on the entire town and building relationships with staff, with each of the members of the board of selectmen, which is another asset I would say with them for this candidate. Spoke about lessons learned, and that one of the biggest lessons this individual learned was in a previous position, focused too much attention on the then chairman of the board, and learned from going to another position that it was critical for not only his success but for the town to move forward. For him to work with all the members of the board or any committees that the board runs. So the questions that I asked, just to kind of get it out there, was the two kind of baseline questions that I asked were the top three challenges facing municipalities today. All of them did a great job of answering that. And finances are certainly very, very high on that priority list. Well, I wouldn't say that anybody really shown above another in answering that question in how they would actually implement those and going to the next step to get through those challenges. The other one I asked was if there's anything that necessarily keeps them up at night or scares them about coming to Lincoln. And none of them really. Here's an area. Yeah, it's honestly, it's a question I use in my professional life. I ask customers all the time, so what keeps you up at night? What do you think? So I wanted to ask them kind of that same question, just kind of in my repertoire. And none of them felt that was the only thing that I did, the last one, number three, did mention with COVID and the pandemic and the uncertainty of when it's going to end. Those challenges and not knowing the sustainability of staffing and maintaining projects and what's going to come from the state, what's going to come from the federal government. That was the one thing that, regardless of whether this individual stays where they are now or comes to Littleton, that's one of the biggest things that we mentioned is another thing. That's pretty much it, but I do reserve the right to use the rest of my time. Don't want too much of a hearing there.
Great, thank you. Mr. Knox?
First, I want to thank the search committee for all the efforts they put in for the different candidates, and I think we were given three candidates who were all strong. I think all three of them could fit into the position number one. So I think we have that going for us. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think it's a case we're going to be sending all the candidates back and say we don't want. I think we have some here, and I have some strong feelings of one. But I'll go through them all. And the kind of questions I asked, I was asking, how do you motivate and keep the morale up within the town hall? I think it's extremely important that people at town hall are appreciated, and you have someone that's going to be able to do that. Then I went on to what kind of relationship do you have with the board, and what is your role with the board? They went into communications, and then I said, I was trying to find out how they relate to other boards and other department heads they have to work with. And I like the idea of us having that half hour with every single candidate, because it's the only time you can sit down and get a better idea as opposed to someone sitting in front of you and how nerve-wracking that can be. So the situation was a lot more relaxed. And in doing this, I think it allows me for sure to get an idea of will this person fit in will this person be able to work with the people we have in town hall? So that's what I was looking at with my kind of questions. Candidate number one, I'll start off with one negative thing. With the other two candidates, it was easy to get answers, and sometimes by the time we were done, they had already answered 2 or 3 of the questions that were later on, because they kept on going with ease about how do you do this and how do you do that. I had to draw a lot more out of that, and when talking about morale, and the part of the morale part was also if it was a problem, and one of the things I took as not being positive, he told an actual case where he eardropped around the corner to listen what the problems were to find out that way. And to me, that's not a way of solving problems. Other than that, his management skills were extremely high. He's been doing it an awful long time. He was strong in how he related to people. He told me that when he took the job, one of the first things he did was to talk to the school superintendent, which I thought was important, because that's where, 65 or 67% of our money goes, and he said, I want to be there first and have a nice, relaxed atmosphere. So I thought that was a real plus. The one that he, I think, is in his past position, which he doesn't have any longer, he was more of a person that was going to be in charge, which is not bad, but he's used to making all the appointments and only bringing them back for a quick okay. So he liked to be in charge, which isn't negative either, but he definitely brought that forward to me, at least, that in his workings and the town he was in, things were under his control, type of thing. Candidate number 2, I thought, was extremely easy to talk to, and he was one of the ones when they asked the question. By the time he was done, we were down to like the 3rd question. He had gone through how he would solve certain problems, how he related to people, how he would go around town hall and make sure people were going to be comfortable with him, as he thought it was that important. And he thought by doing that, it also kept the morale up. He wanted to be a consensus builder, and he liked to have direct contact with people. He was extremely sincere. I think you mentioned that too, and in the way he answered things. When it was all done, we could have kept on talking long because it was that easy to get along with. He'd be someone that I was going to come just walking in and talking to. So I was very satisfied talking to him. I think he could step right in and do the job. Candidate number 3, same type of thing. I walked in and they come very relaxed. They're very knowledgeable of the town, very knowledgeable of the people here. I like the way that he explained how he likes to talk to people under him and likes to stay in constant contact so he knows what's going on, but not actually be telling them what to do, other than making sure that the things are being done in the proper and manner, financially, everything else. Strong believer in having people continue their education so they can keep on staying up with what's going on in today's world as far as municipal government was. He stressed that over and over again, and he said the town should be paying for this type of thing, so our people at town hall and people working in different departments can be making those advances and staying up with things. And I guess that's where I'll go from here. I think just his overall knowledge of what's going on and how to relate to people, what I was impressed with. And I like the idea, like I mentioned before, during this whole thing, being able to speak and you kind of draw that out from people. And I think when you're going for a job, and I think we've all interviewed people at different times, you shouldn't have to stop. You shouldn't sell yourself straight through. And I think this person was nonstop in saying, this is what I can do, this is how I'm going to go about it, this is what I had, the problem I've had in the past, this is how I solved it. So all those little small things that I was going to ask later on were already answered ahead of time. So it was just a smooth transition. So I was very, very satisfied with candidate number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Mr. Brady?
Yeah, first I'd like to echo what Joe most recently highlighted, the appreciation for the task search committee and the work you guys have done to make our job tonight relatively easy. And in the streamlined process, I think this is probably 6 months quicker than the last time we went through this exercise, and I don't feel any less prepared. I think we have the benefit of having tried a few things that didn't really gain us much other than time spent, but the process last night with the individual interviews on a one-on-one basis, that really that is valuable. You may not get a long period of time with each of them, but comforted by the knowledge that in-depth vetting has already taken place by the tax committee. I felt very comfortable after a half hour with each of them. I had a pretty good sense of who they were and how they might fit into the town. In terms of process, I think everybody probably followed the same route, but just for the benefit of the public, we had a bunch of questions that were developed previously by this board, and I selected 5 of them, asked the same 5 of each of the candidates, and then used the opportunity of follow-ups to key in on anything that was specific to that candidate or some of the answers they gave. And in terms of summary, again, using 1, 2, 3, the candidate number 1, some of the pros that I came away with from his prospective candidacy, that he was, he spent a good long time in his most recent position, seemed to have a lot of accomplishments in a wide range of tasks that the town administrator might face, and exhibited skill set in each of those. Also, he was originally from not Littleton, but in this area, so he had some familiarity with the community that was comforting. But I also thought that it was pretty clear that he had was used to a much more of a top-down structure, and I think the quote I wrote down that he had used directly was that I've enjoyed a lot of autonomy. Well, we have had success with the structure that's different than that, so I worry about a fit there. I didn't really get a strong sense, even though there was a familiarity with the town, that there was any real reason to be here, other than the fact that the job was open, and I couldn't really see him staying a long time here. And I wasn't that reassured by his approach to the question relative to communications with the board. Just more of a focus on deciding what the board needs to hear and not, and rather than just finding ways to keep us in the loop on everything. And given recent history, I didn't think that was that's something to be concerned about. As far as candidate 2 goes, I found his personality very engaging. Seemed like a very can-do person in describing his work in his present community. Lots of hand-on experience with fairly sizable problems or projects in the relatively short period of time that he's been a town administrator. Also, it's a similar sized community to Littleton, although the demographics and the makeup of the town are different from where he is now to here. On the con side, similar to candidate 1, even though the town is similar to Littleton in size, the government structure seems to be decidedly different from our own town administrator, and that even things that are here, elected ones like the planning board, are appointees of the town administrator. So the whole getting used to a different structure coming here. And it was just, I guess the bottom line too, is not enough for my mind, a long enough resume as a town administrator anywhere to stand out particularly. The present position he's in, I think, is the only position that he's been a PA in, that's for less than 3 years. And I guess, didn't really leave me with a feeling that there was a defined vision of what Littleton is or where it could go to. Not enough make you feel too comfortable. Candidate 3 is someone that has a good deal of experience here and understands the kind of the culture and the mores of the town and specifically the town government. Has demonstrated great work ethic. And it's shown that, at least impressed me, a genuine interest in the town previously and in staying in touch and wanting to come back. And, had a significant role in major projects in past years with Littleton. So those are all pluses. I wouldn't say the following are cons as much as considerations for candidate 3. Should he be the candidate to come here? And one of those would be, there's a need, given the past history, that there's a need to understand that things have moved on and that, this board may want to approach certain things differently than was the case in the past, and that needs to be understood. I think the certain aspects of the job he needs to continue to grow in, although he has been a town administrator for the past year in another town and was an interim here in the past. There's still growth. There's still growth there, and I didn't see anything that indicate anything other than a desire to continue to work at that. But overall, I guess I would agree with Joe too. I think the town could be well served with each of these folks, and so we're lucky both in the people that want to come to work for Littleton, and we're also, I think, lucky that the task committee provided us with a good grouping of candidates. Personally, I do have a very clear stratification, of how these play out in my mind, but I'll wait for that to be part of the discussion before we get into that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Glady. So my interaction with the candidates was through the search committee interviews, and as I said, we had 13 specific questions that we had asked the candidates. So I just provided a summary based from my notes during those interviews. With respect to candidate number 1, he was very personable and did a lot of research about Littleton, very familiar with the area, as Mr. Glady had stated. His management style to me seemed a little bit more on the stern side with staff. I just hearing about the way his management and interaction with staff and in the board. He has solid budget experience, and he spoke about setting expectations and accountability with staff. He has connections at the state level, which was something that we as a board felt was important. He has some large project experience. He's been both a town manager and a town administrator, and I think more, and from hearing the other comments made by other members, more that town manager, I don't want to call it a mentality, but style came out, it appears, not only to me, but also to members of the board as well. Some of the keynotes and keywords that he mentioned in his cover letter and resume were team building, community outreach, development of policies and procedures. And I didn't really see a lot of those attributes come out during our interview. So it just seemed like they were just put in there, but there wasn't a lot to really support and back them up. I think my biggest, positive with him is that he did have a longevity in the community that he was in. But I have concerns about being able to transition to Littleton and maybe adapt to the town administrator role with the board and maybe his leadership style as well. Candidate 2 was very personable, very pleasant, very proud of his role in municipal government. He liked to be able to help people, which I found really endearing personally. Like I said, well-spoken and pleasant. He was intrigued by the level of involvement by the select board in the town. I think, I don't know if he's just not used to that, but he just was he found it very interesting that we are that hands-on and that we're that involved in our community. He spoke about carrying out policies to achieve objectives of the select board, which I thought was spot on in his interview, and certainly something that we would look for in our next town administrator. He did say that he leads by example. One of the questions was, are you a manager? What's your management style? And he did say he leads by example and demands that his employees follow his lead. The word demand kind of turned me off a little bit, to be honest. And, you know, the textbook, that could be a positive thing or it could be a negative thing, but it really depends on how that's articulated and implemented with the staff. So you just don't know. He has connections at the state level, very strong strategic planning. But one thing with respect to finances is he's not really worked with a strong finance committee before. And certainly we know as a select board that we have a strong finance committee. A few key words that he used was leads with confidence and conviction, technical proficiencies and plans, execute, oversee, and prepare. So I found that interesting. I saw some of those attributes come out during his interview, but others not so much. With respect to candidate number 3, he was very personable, and he certainly was very personal, very pleasant to be with, very forthcoming with information, very relaxed. It was a very easy exchange. And some of the words that this candidate used in his resume and his cover letter, which really struck me, that I wanted to just point out to the board, because they really, I think, are very pertinent to what we're looking for in the town administrator and what we really need in our community and for our staff. And was supervise, mentor, support, and support department heads. And he gave really good examples about when he has mentored department heads and provided them with leadership training and other tools to become more successful. And it was nice to see that he not only used those keywords, but actually backed them up. The other words he used were partner, recommend, communicate, and coordinate. And he spoke about being in sync with the board, the importance of that. And the one answer that I really liked that he gave was, he said that his role is to give for the board the options to make the right decisions. So making sure that we're prepared and we have the information that we need to make the right decision. So I thought that was a really, really good answer, especially for someone in the town administrator role. He also has connections at the state level, and he gave great examples about building relationships and staff with the community. I think the biggest difference for me personally, and a few members here alluded to that during their summaries, was the closing statement was, why do you want to be Littleton's next town administrator? And this candidate talked about what he would bring to the community, what he could give to the community and do for the community. And I really felt like the other candidates were more talking about what Littleton was going to do for them, you know, personally and professionally, and not vice versa. So that was just another thing that really, really struck out with me with this candidate. And, you know, the other comments that were made here tonight, they're all really strong candidates. I mean, I was very pleased with the candidate pool that we had, the applications that we had. I think we should, Littleton's definitely a desirable community to work in, without a doubt. We learned that, you know, through the cover letters and interviews with people. But it's, you know, it really does come down to a good fit. And we, as a board and as a town, have been through a lot recently in these past few years. So I think as we, you know, move forward with the discussions, you know, there's certain aspects of the job that they all can do, but we just need to find out what is that added value, or what is that extra, those extra characteristics and attributes that we really think are going to make somebody a good fit for our community. And our town and our staff, especially, you know, we're very fortunate we have Joe Layden. He's an exceptional assistant town administrator. He has a really strong background in planning and those sorts of things. And I know he really wants to grow professionally and have someone that he can really work with and mentor him. And I know that, one of the candidates specifically spoke to that, and that was candidate number 3 specifically. And yeah, which I thought, meant a lot. So those are my comments. So at this time, I don't know if you want to do any follow-up or.
If I could just bounce back, a candidate too, you mentioned, was proud of his role, proud of, he said something similar to me, he said,
Yeah.
I just want to start by saying I love my job.
Yeah.
And, I love helping people, and I think that very much came through with candidate number 2 and candidate number 3. I think candidate number 1 certainly has a ton of experience, and, a couple of my colleagues mentioned that any one of these candidates could step in and do the job, which I don't think is untrue, but I do think that there was, in my eyes, and listening to y'all, I think that there was, my estimation, it seemed like candidate number 3 seemed to be kind of a clear front runner at least, or if we were to force rank them, it seemed like candidate number 3 is kind of like number 1. As far as where we put that individual. And then part of that love my job thing that candidate number 2 said was very much, the passion came through with both number 2 and number 3.
Right.
And number 3 is the lady that mentioned some specifics about candidate number 3 and the fact that we are where we are as a community. I think candidate number 3 is going to put us in the best position to get us to where we want to go over the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and the knowledge and understanding of the makeup and the personalities and the relationship that candidate number 3 has with many folks in the town already, not just department heads and staff, but residents, many business owners. You mentioned his work ethic, Paul, and this is an individual that oftentimes is the first one in, and more often than not the last one out. And I think that, frankly, our time apart has allowed this individual to mature exponentially. And in hindsight, I say all the time, we learn so much more from our failures, not that him leaving, going to another community was a failure, but there was aspirations of this candidate in the past, and the lessons learned by going away and looking back and having this unique opportunity to come back and having learned so much and get the benefit of this extra year plus of this individual working in another community as the number 1 individual, as a town administrator. And I don't know if we were looking to define a clear choice this evening. I guess we have to come back with 1, 2, or 3 in one day.
Well, I mean, it's totally up to us what we want to do from this point on. I mean, the only obligation was for TASC to bring us at least 2 candidates forward. We as a board now, it's totally the ball's in our court about how, what we want to do as far as moving forward at this time. I don't know, Matthew, if you have any other comments that you want to add, or I haven't hearing everybody speak.
I agree on number 1. I think that was an easy one for me. 2 and 3, I think they're much closer for me than they are for Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the sincerity of number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was important, and there were some things about my interview with 3 which I thought was a negative, but ultimately, I think either one of them would be excellent, and I would definitely support number 3 if it's the will of the board.
Okay.
We can't go wrong.
Right.
I guess the question is, do we, any of us are collectively have would we see value in having more than one candidate come in? Do we need to have a second round? For my own part, I mean, I have, as I mentioned, the stratification, and if it didn't come through when I was describing the pros and cons of each of them. Candidate number 3, I don't mind saying there's a familiarity there that helps feed that, but my eye and my ear were closely attuned to what's changed, has there been growth? And it has been, and I was, at least it's evident. And I was very pleased with my particular interview, with it. So it isn't entirely based on past experience, but I don't want to minimize the value of that. We went through this process not too long ago, so I'd love to hit the ground running, and a lot on the plate, whether it's the existing library project, prospective council on aging, center of some sort, and a lot of things we'd just love to do, and there'll be a learning curve for somebody. And while with the other two candidates, there'd be more of a learning curve. You have to learn the community. I don't want to overweigh that, but I don't want to minimize that either. And I agree. I think with Matthew, candidate two in my mind was significantly stronger than number one in terms of envisioning a better fit in the town. I like the rapport. I like his approach to things. But in my mind, anyway, there's a distinction between 3 and 2 and 1. And 1 while I hate to make anybody go third out of 3, to have gotten to this point, you had to beat out a lot of other folks anyway. His qualifications are they speak for themselves, and I think he'd be strong, maybe too strong. So the first question is, do we need to have him more than 1 on Monday night? I don't personally see that, but I would defer to anybody who said, gee, I'd really like to take another look at him. But for my part, I would be happy just to have the 3 come in and go through interviews from the town. It's a benefit of our dialogue and taking it from there. But as I said, it's too important a decision to make lightly, so if others feel differently, I'd be happy to support that.
Okay.
I feel very similar, and I think that I don't want to discount the fact that the learning curve part of it is exacerbated by the fact that we are in a COVID environment. There's not as much of an opportunity to have social events where a new person coming in, we've seen it when we're just appointed.
No schmoozing allowed.
Kind of what it comes down to. So we haven't been able to shake hands with our new HR director and our new treasurer. Even
Some people have only met through Zoom.
yeah, so I think that there's you said, I don't overweight it, but I think personally, I am going to put more weight on that for my decision. I do agree that, it makes sense in this instance, for us to bring forth the one candidate that we all seem to have a consensus on. I don't want to jump the gun yet.
Sorry, no. I agree with almost all the statements that have been made so far. I am comfortable with number 2. With number 3, obviously from being here before, and I think it is important, you've already brought it up, that he can step right in right away. He knows what's going on, he knows the people. And I asked him point blank, I said, why would you want to come back here? And his answer was, I love the people, I love the town. And I thought there was, the other people couldn't answer that question because they haven't been here before, but I wanted to find out why you didn't want to come back when you were here. I mean, you never stopped loving the working relationship you have with the people here, and he does have a great association with the people that work at the town hall and with the board, so
He's kept up those contacts. So I was surprised and amazed to hear that.
and he told a story, and it's true, that he had a phone call from a resident, at least one resident that I know of, and that person wanted to know how he was doing, because that person was so impressed how he handled himself working with the seniors. And I think this person really felt that, wanted to make sure that he was doing okay. And so how often does that happen when someone leaves a town that you get a phone call like that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Making an impression. Honestly, I feel a little bit different, I think, than you all overall. I might certainly, I feel, candidate number 3 rose above the other candidates personally during our interview process through the town administrative search committee for many reasons. The skill set's one thing. But it was really the passion and the caring and the very genuine about wanting to come back here and wanting to be part of this community. It feels like refer to it as his home. And to me, you can't instill that in somebody. That comes naturally, and that comes with passion and caring and commitment to the community. And I feel we have new hires on board right now, and we have, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have staff that have needs. There was a few things that made me uncertain about the other two being a good fit for the town. I had no reservations whatsoever with number 3. So, and that's just the way, and especially, wanting to take into consideration, Joe Layden and, the other staff as well, who's going to work best in that role with them. So I just feel at this point we could probably just move forward. I don't see that there's a need to invite anybody else back, and just proceed with inviting candidate number 3 to meet with us on Monday night.
I agree. So, and this isn't important enough. I'll state it again. It sounds like we have a consensus, but it should only be by consensus if we're just going to come back with one.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So nobody should feel pressured into that. But maybe for the audience, it wasn't clear earlier. We're referring to them by numbers rather than names, kind of in deference to the candidates, because they haven't necessarily disclosed that they were to their communities they're in. That they're out looking. So I guess we were going to move forward with moving to invite one of them, to Monday's meeting for a public interview. I guess we can pull the blanket off the statute and disclose who it is. So whenever you're ready for a motion, I'm happy to do it by name.
Do you want to do the motion by name, or?
I think we need to.
Yeah,
we have to at this point.
And the other information is, while we've been discreet about not disclosing anybody, if somebody's really curious about it's a matter of public record.
Right.
You can look it up.
Right.
Does the board want me to make a motion?
I'm ready for it.
Yeah,
I'm very comfortable with it.
Agreed.
Yes.
Then I will move that the select board vote to name Anthony Ansaldi as the final candidate for the position of town administrator for the town of Littleton, and take no further action on the remaining 2 candidates at this time, and to invite them to Monday's select board meeting.
Okay. Great. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glady?
Yes.
And Cindy Ampley is aye. So, very, very appreciative again to the Town Administrative Search Committee, and very excited to see Mr. Ansaldi before us on Monday night to a public interview before the board. So those who are not familiar with him can become familiar with him. And I sincerely want to thank the other candidates who applied and had interest in our community, realizing and appreciating that it is a special place and that they put themselves out there and wanted to be part of it. So thank you very much for that.
And thanks to Joe Layden, who's not here tonight, but has been there very much for us over the past few months, and really stepped up in a difficult time, not just filling a vacancy, but in these times that nobody's quite experienced before.
Right.
And with a smile on his face at all times.
Yeah, no, just been wonderful.
Very fortunate, yeah.
Right. So
And wish all those candidates the best of luck.
yes, absolutely. So we will be back here in room 103 on Monday night at 6:30 p.m.
And we'll be at town meeting on Sunday.
That's right, Sunday at 10, that's right, yeah.
And town meeting is Sunday, yes.
Sunday at 10 a.m., it's been moved, thank you.
Scheduled.
The motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made second. All those in favor, Mr. Glady?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Cindy Appley is yes. Good night. Thank you.